Clara's fingers were blue when she drove the first stake into the frozen ground outside the cabin wall. Her neighbors watched from their windows, shaking their heads. "Burying air ducts in winter," Mrs. Henderson had said that morning, loud enough for everyone to hear. That girl's lost her mind along with her parents. But Clara's hands didn't stop moving. The notebook, Aunt Marta's notebook, lay open in the snow beside her, its pages crackling with ice. The diagrams didn't make sense to anyone else. They didn't have to. Because in 3 weeks, when the temperature dropped to 20 below zero, Clara's cabin would be the only one in the county where people could still feel their toes. And those same neighbors would be knocking on her door, begging. Before we continue with Clara's story, I want to invite you to subscribe to this channel and follow this journey to the very end. Comment below with the city you're watching from. I'd love to see how far this story travels. Now, let's get back to Clara. The day Clara's mother died, the cabin still smelled like bread. 3 days later, when Clara walked through the door of Aunt Marta's inheritance, it smelled like rot and mice and 20 years of emptiness. "This is what she left you?" The lawyer, Mr. Pemberton, stood in the doorway like he was afraid to come inside. "I'm sorry, Miss Vin. I truly am." Clara didn't answer. She was staring at the walls, or what was left of them. Gaps ran between the logs wide enough to slide her hand through. The floor sagged in the middle like a hammock. And the cold. God, the cold came through those walls like they weren't even there. "How much money did she leave?" Clara asked. Pemberton cleared his throat. 93 cents. And this property." 93 cents. "I'm afraid so." Clara walked to the center of the room and turned in the slow circle. The cabin was maybe 15 feet by 15 feet. One room. One window with half the glass missing. A fireplace that looked like it might collapse if she breathed on it wrong. "There's talk in town," Pemberton said carefully, "about your aunt. About how she managed out here." "What kind of talk?" "Strange talk. She didn't come to town often. When she did, she'd say odd things. About air and walls and keeping the cold where it belonged." He paused. People thought she was touched in the head. Clara kept turning. In the corner, she spotted a wooden chest, its lid partially open. Inside, she could see the corner of a leather-bound book. "I'll manage," Clara said. "Miss Vin, winter's coming hard this year. The farmers are saying, 'I said I'll manage.'" Pemberton left. Clara listened to his wagon creak away down the frozen road. And then she was alone. Completely alone. Her parents were dead. Her father 2 months ago from pneumonia. Her mother 3 days ago from a heart that simply gave up trying. No siblings. No aunts or uncles except Marta. And Marta had been dead for 5 years before anyone even found her body. Clara walked to the chest and pulled out the leather book. The cover was worn smooth, and when she opened it, she saw her aunt's handwriting. Tight, precise, covering every page in diagrams and notes and measurements. "The walls breathe," the first page said. "Let them breathe, but control where the breath goes." Clara flipped through the pages, drawings of the cabin walls, drawings of channels and ducts, and something Marta had labeled the air trap system. Pages and pages of calculations about temperatures and wood density and airflow. "You really were crazy, weren't you?" Clara whispered. But then she looked up at the gaps in the walls, and she felt the November wind cut straight through to her bones, and she thought, crazy people don't survive 20 Minnesota winters alone. That night, Clara burned the last of the furniture, a broken chair and a table with 3 legs, just to keep from freezing. She wrapped herself in both her dresses and her mother's coat and still shivered so hard her teeth hurt. In the morning, Mrs. Henderson came by with her daughter Ruth. "We heard about your mother," Mrs. Henderson said, not stepping inside. "Lord rest her soul. You can't stay here, dear. This cabin's not fit for animals, let alone a young girl." "I'm 16, Clara said. "I'm not a girl." "You're 16 with 93 cents and a cabin that should have been torn down years ago." Mrs. Henderson's eyes swept over the walls. "Your aunt was touched. Everyone knew it. She spent her last years talking to herself and stacking firewood in patterns that didn't make sense to anyone. You can't follow in her footsteps." Ruth, who was 18 and married to the blacksmith's son, nodded sympathetically. "There's work in town, Clara. Mrs. Patterson needs help with her laundry. It's not much, but—" "I'm staying," Clara said. Mrs. Henderson's expression hardened. "Pride's a sin, child, especially when it leads to freezing to death." After they left, Clara opened Aunt Marta's notebook again. She studied the diagrams until her eyes hurt. The drawing showed the cabin walls, but not as they were now, as they could be. Marta had sketched in layers of firewood stacked against the exterior walls, but not randomly. Each piece was positioned deliberately, creating channels between the wood and the wall. And running through those channels were what Marta called air ducts, tubes made of hollowed wood that connected to vents near the ground and the roof. "Cold air sinks," Marta had written. "Hot air rises. But if you can control the path, you can trap the warmth where you need it." Clara read that line 3 times. Then she put on her mother's coat and walked outside. The woodpile behind the cabin was enormous, cords and cords of split logs, all stacked in a specific pattern that Clara had assumed was random. But looking at it now, with Marta's notebook fresh in her mind, she saw the organization. Different sizes, different types of wood, each stack labeled with chalk marks that matched symbols in the notebook. Clara spent the next 2 days dragging wood to the front of the cabin. Her hands blistered. Her back screamed. But she kept moving, kept stacking, following Marta's diagrams like a map to survival. On the 3rd day, Thomas Crawford stopped his wagon in the road. "What in God's name are you doing, girl?" Clara didn't stop working. "Building." "Building what? A wall of firewood?" Thomas climbed down from his wagon and walked closer. He was 45, owned the mill, and thought everyone in the county should listen to him. "That's firewood, Clara. It's meant to go in the fireplace, not outside the cabin." "I know what firewood is for." "Do you? Because from where I'm standing, it looks like you're following your crazy aunt's ghost instructions." He picked up Marta's notebook from where Clara had left it on a stump. He flipped through it, his expression moving from confusion to disgust. "Air ducts buried in firewood, channels for trapped warmth. This is nonsense, Clara. Your aunt died alone and half mad. Don't follow her path." Clara stopped working. She turned to face Thomas, and her voice came out colder than the November air. "My aunt survived 20 winters in this cabin. How many people in town can say they lived alone that long and made it through?" "She made it through because she was too stubborn to die, not because she was smart." "Then I'll be stubborn too." Thomas threw the notebook back at her. It landed in the dirt. "You'll be dead by January. And when they find your frozen body in this wreck of a cabin, everyone will say the same thing. Should have listened to reason." He drove away. Clara picked up the notebook, brushed off the dirt, and went back to stacking wood. By the end of the week, she'd covered the north wall, the one that faced the worst of the wind. The firewood was stacked 3 feet deep, creating a layer between the cabin and the elements. And running through that layer, following Marta's instructions exactly, were the air ducts. Clara had found them in the woodpile, hollowed logs, carefully preserved, marked with the same chalk symbols as the wood stacks. She'd buried them in the firewood according to the diagrams, positioning them to draw in cold air near the ground and exhaust it out near the roofline. The theory, if Marta's notes were right, was that the system would create a convection current. The cold air would sink through the channels, get warmed by the heat escaping through the cabin walls, and rise back out the top vents. Meanwhile, the mass of firewood would act as insulation, trapping the warmth inside the cabin instead of letting it bleed away into the November sky. If it works, Clara thought. If. That night, the first real cold snap hit. The temperature dropped to 15 degrees. Clara built up the fire in the fireplace and waited. At first, nothing changed. The cabin was still freezing. The wind still howled through the gaps in the walls. Clara wrapped herself in blankets and tried to sleep, wondering if Thomas Crawford was right. Wondering if she was following madness instead of wisdom. But then, around midnight, she noticed something. The floor near the fireplace, the spot where she always felt a draft, wasn't as cold. She put her hand down. Still chilly, but not the bone-deep freeze she'd felt every other night. Clara got up and walked to the north wall, the one she'd covered with firewood and ducts. She pressed her palm against the logs. They were cool, but not ice cold. And more importantly, she couldn't feel wind coming through. "It's working," she whispered. "It's actually working." The next morning, Ruth Henderson came by with a basket of bread. "Mother sent this," Ruth said, handing it over. She glanced at the firewood wall. "That's interesting. It's keeping the cold out." Ruth bit her lip. "Clara, people in town are talking. They're saying you're doing what your aunt did. They're saying you're going to end up like her." "Dead at 72 after surviving alone for 20 years? I'll take it." "That's not what I mean." Ruth stepped closer, lowering her voice. "They're saying you're touched, that the grief drove you mad. Mrs. Henderson is talking about having the pastor come visit, to pray over you." Clara felt something hot and sharp rise in her chest. "Tell Mrs. Henderson that if she wants to pray, she can pray from her own house. And tell everyone in town that I don't care what they think." Ruth left. Clara went back to work. Over the next 2 weeks, she covered the west wall and the south wall. The east wall faced the morning sun and didn't need as much protection, so she only stacked the firewood 2 feet deep there. Each night, the temperature dropped lower. Each morning, Clara woke up cold, but not frozen. The cabin wasn't warm, not by any stretch, but it was survivable. And each day, more people stopped by to stare. "She's building a coffin out of firewood," someone said. "Burying herself alive before winter even kills her," someone else added. Thomas Crawford stopped by again, this time with his sons. They stood in the road and laughed. "Air ducts," Thomas shouted. "Buried in firewood. Tell me, Clara, when you freeze to death this winter, can I have that notebook? I'll sell it as a comedy show." His sons howled with laughter. Clara kept working. On December 1st, the real winter arrived. The temperature dropped to 0, then 5 below, then 10 below. The snow came down so thick that Clara couldn't see the road from her cabin. She was sealed in, alone, with nothing but her firewood walls and Marta's strange system between her and the killing cold. Clara built up the fire and waited. The cabin creaked and groaned under the weight of the snow. The wind screamed, and Clara sat in the middle of the room, wrapped in blankets, watching the flames and wondering if she'd made a terrible mistake. But the cold didn't come, not the way it had before. The cabin stayed at maybe 40 degrees, cold enough that she could see her breath, but not cold enough to kill her. The firewood walls worked. The air ducts worked. The whole insane system that Marta had designed actually worked. Clara laughed. She laughed until tears ran down her face, until her sides hurt, until she couldn't breathe. Because she'd done it. Against every piece of advice, against every warning, against the mockery of the entire town. She'd survived. But then she heard the knocking. Desperate, frantic knocking on her door. Clara opened it to find Ruth Henderson standing in the snow, her lips blue, her whole body shaking. "Please," Ruth said, "our cabin. The fire's not enough. We can't stay warm. Thomas's wife, she's coughing blood. The cold's killing us. Please, Clara, please help us." Clara stared at her. This morning, Ruth's mother had called her mad. Yesterday, Thomas Crawford had mocked her to her face. 2 days ago, half the town had laughed at her firewood walls and buried air ducts. And now, they needed her. Clara stepped aside. "Come in," she said, "and bring Thomas's wife. Bring anyone who's freezing. But Ruth, when this is over, when spring comes and everyone survived, you tell them. You tell everyone in town who built this warmth. You tell them whose system saved their lives." Ruth nodded, tears freezing on her cheeks. "I'll tell them, I promise. I'll tell them it was you, Aunt Marta. I'll tell them you were right." Clara watched Ruth run back into the snow, watched her disappear toward town, and then she closed the door. She walked to the center of her cabin, her warm, surviving cabin, and she opened Marta's notebook one more time. On the last page, in her aunt's careful handwriting, was a single sentence. "They'll call you crazy until the day they need you. Then they'll call you a miracle." Clara pressed her hand to the page. "I'm not crazy, Aunt Marta," she whispered. "And neither were you." Outside, the winter raged on. But inside Clara's cabin, wrapped in firewood and buried air ducts, and the wisdom of a woman everyone had called mad, the warmth held steady. And Clara knew, with absolute certainty, that she was going to survive. Not just survive. She was going to prove them all wrong. Every single one of them. The knocking started again. This time it was louder, more desperate, more people. Clara stood up and walked to the door. She took a deep breath, steadied herself, and prepared to save the lives of everyone who'd mocked her. Because that's what survivors did. They endured. They proved the world wrong. And when the world came begging, they opened the door anyway. Clara opened the door to chaos. Ruth stood there shivering, but behind her were 6 more people. Thomas Crawford's wife, Mary, barely standing, her husband holding her up. The Johnsons, both of them, their 3 children pressed between them. And behind them, old Mr. Peterson, who'd told Clara 2 weeks ago that she was wasting her inheritance on foolishness. "Inside," Clara said. "Quickly." They stumbled in, bringing snow and desperation with them. The cabin that had felt spacious for one person suddenly felt like a coffin. 9 people in a 15 by 15 room. Clara's breath caught. "Close the door," Thomas said, his voice cracking. "Please, God, close the door." Clara shut it. The wind's howl cut off immediately, leaving only the sound of chattering teeth and Mary Crawford's wet, rattling cough. "How?" Thomas whispered. He was staring at the walls, at the fireplace, at the warmth he could actually feel. "How is it warm in here?" "The same way I told you it would be," Clara said. She moved to the fireplace, added another log. "The firewood walls trap the heat. The air ducts circulate the cold out. It's not magic. It's engineering." "Engineering," Mr. Peterson repeated. He laughed, but it wasn't a kind sound. "That's what we're calling madness now? Engineering?" Clara turned on him. "You're standing in my warm cabin instead of your freezing house. Call it whatever you want." Mary Crawford collapsed into a coughing fit. Blood flecked her lips. Her children started crying. "She needs to lie down," Ruth said. "Clara, do you have—" "Put her by the fireplace." Clara grabbed her only blanket and spread it on the floor. Not too close. Her lungs are raw from the cold. Too much heat too fast will make it worse. Thomas helped his wife down. His hands were shaking. How do you know that? My mother, last winter, before she... Clara didn't finish. She turned to Mrs. Johnson instead. Are your children frostbitten? I don't know. I don't think so. Check their fingers and toes. If the skin's black or gray, tell me immediately. Clara moved through the cramped space, checking faces, looking for signs of serious cold damage. The Johnson children were scared, but unharmed. Mr. Peterson's ears were bright red, first-stage frostbite, but survivable. Ruth's lips were blue, but she'd warm up. We need to go back, Mr. Peterson said suddenly. My wife. I left her at home. She's alone with the fire, but... The fire won't be enough, Thomas said. His voice was hollow. Nothing's enough. This cold. I've never felt anything like it. 20 below zero, and still dropping. Our cabin was burning through firewood so fast we couldn't keep up. And the wind. Jesus Christ. The wind just rips the heat away like it's nothing. Your walls have gaps, Clara said. The heat bleeds out faster than you can make it. So do yours. Mr. Peterson gestured at the visible cracks between the logs. I can see daylight through those gaps. How is this place warm when ours aren't? Clara walked to the north wall and put her hand flat against the logs. Touch it. Peterson hesitated, then reached out. His eyes widened. It's not cold. The firewood outside is insulation. 3 feet of wood between this room and the wind. And the air ducts, she pointed to where the hollow logs entered the cabin near the floor. Cold air gets pulled through the channels in the firewood. It warms up as it passes through. By the time it comes out the top vents, it's already 40 degrees warmer. The system feeds itself. That's impossible, Peterson said. You're standing in the proof. The door rattled with more knocking. Everyone froze. Don't, Thomas said. Don't open it. There's no room. We can barely breathe as it is. Clara looked at him, looked at his wife, still coughing on the floor, looked at his children, who'd stopped crying but were watching everything with wide, frightened eyes. How many people told you not to open your door when we came knocking? Clara asked quietly. Thomas's face went red. That's different. How? We're here now. We're already safe. Letting more people in just puts everyone at risk. Clara walked to the door and opened it. Mrs. Henderson stood there, alone, her face gray with cold. Please, she whispered. Ruth said... Come in, Mrs. Henderson. Clara, no, Thomas started. This is my cabin, Clara said, her voice cutting through the room like a blade. My walls, my warmth. I decide who comes in. And Mrs. Henderson comes in. She helped the older woman inside. Mrs. Henderson was shaking so hard she could barely walk. Clara sat her down near the fireplace, next to Mary Crawford. I'm sorry, Mrs. Henderson said, tears running down her frozen face. I'm so sorry. I said terrible things. I told everyone you were mad. I told the pastor to come pray over you, like you were possessed by demons. I'm sorry, Clara. I'm so sorry. Clara knelt down in front of her. Why did you come alone? Where's your husband? He wouldn't come. He said... Her voice broke. He said he'd rather freeze than beg help from Marta Vin's mad niece. He's at home, alone, and I couldn't watch him die for his pride. The room went silent. Even Mary's coughing stopped. How bad is he? Clara asked. He's 68 years old and stubborn as iron. He'll sit in that freezing cabin until his heart stops before he admits he was wrong. Mrs. Henderson grabbed Clara's hand. Please, Please, he's my husband. I know what he said about you. I know what I said.
But please, Clara stood up. I'll go. What? Ruth said. Clara, you can't. The cold.
I survived it to build these walls. I can survive it to save a life. Clara pulled on her mother's coat, wrapped a scarf around her face. Mrs. Henderson, you stay here. Warm up. How far is your cabin? 1/4 mile down the road. I'll bring him back. Thomas stood up. I'm coming with you. You need to stay with your wife. You can't carry a full-grown man by yourself. And he swallowed hard. And I owe you. For this. For saving Mary. For saving my children. I owe you. Clara looked at him, saw the shame in his eyes, saw the pride that was finally breaking. Get your coat, she said. They went out into the killing cold. The wind hit Clara like a physical blow. 20 below zero felt like knives cutting through her coat, through her skin, straight into her bones. The snow was knee-deep and still falling. Clara could barely see 10 feet ahead. This way, Thomas shouted over the wind. Follow me. They fought through the drifts. Clara's lungs burned with every breath. The cold air felt like she was inhaling broken glass. Beside her, Thomas was struggling just as badly. But they kept moving. Why are you doing this? Thomas yelled. What? Why are you helping him? Henderson's the one who started all the talk about you being mad. He's the one who told everyone to stay away from you. Why risk your life for him? Clara didn't answer for a long moment. Then, because my Aunt Marta died alone. And maybe if people had cared less about her being strange and more about her being human, she wouldn't have. I'm not going to let another person die just because they were too proud to ask for help. They reached Henderson's cabin. Thomas pounded on the door. Henderson, open up! It's Thomas Crawford! No answer. Thomas hit the door again. Henderson, damn it! Your wife sent us! Open the door! Still nothing. Clara pushed past Thomas and tried the handle. Locked. She looked at Thomas. Break it down. What? Break the door down. He's either unconscious or too stubborn to move. Either way, we're not leaving without him. Thomas threw his shoulder into the door. Once. Twice. On the third hit, the lock splintered and the door crashed open. The cold inside Henderson's cabin was worse than outside. Because outside, you expected it. Inside, where a fire should have been burning, where warmth should have been, the cold felt like death itself. Henderson was sitting in a chair by the fireplace. The fire was completely dead, just cold ashes. And Henderson was staring at it, not moving, barely breathing. Jesus Christ, Thomas whispered. Clara ran to him. Mr. Henderson, Mr. Henderson, can you hear me? His eyes moved slightly, focused on her. Marta's niece. Yes, we're taking you to my cabin. You need warmth. No. His voice was barely audible. Won't beg. You're not begging. I'm offering. Same thing. Clara grabbed his face, forced him to look at her. Listen to me. Your wife is in my cabin. She's warming up. She's crying for you. She left you here because she couldn't watch you die. Do you understand? She chose life over pride. Now you have to do the same. Henderson's eyes filled with tears. They froze on his cheeks almost immediately. I said terrible things. Yes, you did, and you'll have the rest of your life to regret them. But only if you let us take you to warmth. Only if you survive. He stared at her for a long moment. Then, barely, help me. Thomas and Clara got him standing. He could barely walk. His legs were stiff from the cold, his movements jerky and wrong. They half carried, half dragged him out of the cabin and back into the storm. The walk back was hell. Henderson was dead weight between them. The wind howled. The cold bit deeper with every step. Clara's hands went numb. Her feet went numb.
She kept moving because stopping meant dying. "Almost there," Thomas kept saying. "Almost there. I could see the cabin. Almost there." They burst through Clara's door and collapsed. 9 people were instantly on their feet, helping, grabbing Henderson, pulling him toward the fireplace. Mrs. Henderson fell on her husband, sobbing. "You fool! You stubborn, prideful fool! I thought you were dead. I thought I'd lost you." Henderson couldn't answer. He was shaking too hard. But he wrapped his arms around his wife and held on. Clara sat on the floor, trying to catch her breath. Her whole body hurt. Thomas was beside her, looking worse than she felt. "You're right," he said quietly. "About the walls. About everything. I'm sorry. I mocked you. I called you mad. I told my sons to laugh at you. And you just saved my wife's life. You just saved Henderson's life after everything we did to you." Clara looked at him. "You did it because you were scared. All of you. Scared of winter. Scared of being different. Scared of trusting something you didn't understand. I get it. I was scared too. But you built the walls anyway. Because being scared isn't an excuse to do nothing." The door rattled again. More knocking. Clara closed her eyes. "How many more people are out there?" Ruth went to look. She came back pale. "At least a dozen. Maybe more. They're all coming, Clara. Everyone who's freezing. They all want in." "We can't fit a dozen more people," Mr. Peterson said. "We can barely move as it is." "So what do we do?" Mrs. Johnson asked. "Turn them away? Let them freeze?" "We teach them," Clara said. Everyone turned to stare at her. "Teach them what?" Thomas asked. Clara stood up. Her legs shook, but she steadied herself. How to build their own walls. How to install their own air ducts. How to survive. She walked to the door and opened it. A crowd stood in the snow. Families she recognized. Faces she'd seen in town. All of them freezing. All of them desperate. "Listen to me," Clara called out. "I can't fit all of you in here, but I can show you how to make your own cabins warm. Who has firewood stored?" Hands went up. Most of them. "Who has tools? Axes, saws, hammers?" More hands. "Then we can do this, but we have to work fast. The temperature's still dropping. We have maybe 6 hours before people start dying. Who's willing to work?" "Work how?" someone shouted. "It's 20 below zero out here." "Yes, it is. And sitting in your freezing cabins waiting to die isn't going to change that. So you have a choice. Come with me and work, or go home and freeze. Decide now." For a moment, no one moved. Then Thomas Crawford stepped forward. "I'll work. Tell me what to do." Mr. Henderson, still shaking by the fireplace, raised his hand. "I'll work too, soon as I can stand." Ruth stepped up. "I'm in." One by one they came forward. 15 people, willing to work in the killing cold because the alternative was death. Clara looked at them, these people who'd mocked her, doubted her, called her mad, and she felt something shift in her chest. Not forgiveness exactly, but something close to it. Something like hope. "All right," she said, "here's what we're going to do." She grabbed Marta's notebook and opened it to the diagrams. She showed them the air duct system, showed them how to stack the firewood in layers, leaving channels for airflow, showed them the hollow logs and how to position them, explained the physics as simply as she could. Cold air sinks, hot air rises, but you can control the path. "It won't make your cabins hot,"
she said, "but it'll keep you alive. 40 degrees inside, maybe 45 if you're lucky. Cold enough to see your breath, but warm enough to survive the night. That's all we're aiming for. Survival." "How long will it take?" someone asked. "To cover one wall properly? 3 hours if you work fast."
You'll need to do at least 2 walls, north and west, to make a real difference. So figure 6 hours of work. In this cold. People looked at each other. Clara could see the doubt creeping back in. "I know it sounds impossible," she said, "but I did it, alone, in warmer weather. You have help now. You have me to guide you, and you have no choice. So stop thinking about how hard it is and start thinking about whether you want your children to wake up alive tomorrow morning." That did it. Parents looked at their children. Husbands looked at their wives. And the doubt turned to determination. "Who's first?" Clara asked. "Me," Thomas said. "My cabin. Mary and the kids can stay here while we work." "All right. Who lives closest to Thomas?" 3 hands went up. "You 3 are next. We'll work on Thomas's cabin first, then move to yours. Everyone else, gather your firewood and tools. Sort the wood by size. I'll come around to each cabin and mark the pieces you need for the ducts. Don't start building until I've checked your walls. If you do it wrong, it won't work." They scattered. Clara pulled Thomas aside. "Your wife needs rest," she said quietly. "Real rest. Her lungs are damaged. When we're done with your cabin, keep her by the fire. Don't let her exert herself." Thomas nodded. His eyes were red. "She was coughing blood this morning. I thought—" His voice cracked. "I thought she was going to die. Right there in front of me. Die because I was too cheap to buy enough firewood. Too stupid to listen when you tried to explain your aunt's system." "She's not going to die. But Thomas, you need to know something. This isn't a permanent fix. The firewood walls will help, but they'll burn through your wood supply fast. Come spring, you'll need to restock. And next winter, you'll need to plan better. More wood, better walls. This is just to get us through the next 3 months." 3 months is enough. 3 months is a miracle. He grabbed her hand. "Thank you. I know I don't deserve—" "Stop. Just stop." Clara pulled her hand back. "You don't get to apologize your way out of this. You were cruel. You mocked me when I needed help. You laughed when I was building these walls. Don't thank me like we're friends. Thank me like you're a man who just learned a hard lesson about humility." Thomas flinched, but he nodded. "You're right. I'm sorry. Not sorry like it fixes things. Sorry like I know I was wrong, and I'll spend the rest of my life proving I learned from it." "Good enough," Clara said. "Now let's go save your family." They worked through the night. Clara moved from cabin to cabin, showing people how to stack the wood, how to position the air ducts, how to leave gaps for airflow. Her hands bled from handling the frozen logs. Her feet went numb from standing in the snow. But she didn't stop. Thomas worked beside her the whole time. So did Ruth. So did Mr. Peterson, who'd warmed up enough to be useful. They became a team, Clara directing, the others executing. One wall at a time, one cabin at a time, building warmth out of wood and desperation and Marta's strange genius. By dawn, they'd finished 4 cabins. Thomas's, the Johnsons', the Petersons', and Ruth's. Clara stood in the middle of the road, exhausted, barely able to stand. The sun was rising, a weak, pale light that did nothing to warm the air. The temperature was still 15 below zero. But in those 4 cabins, people were warming up, surviving. "Clara," she turned. Mrs. Henderson was standing in Clara's cabin doorway. "You should sleep," Mrs. Henderson said. "You've been working all night. So have the others.
The others didn't design the system. They were just following your lead. You need rest." Clara wanted to argue, but her body was screaming. She could barely lift her arms. 1 hour, she said. Then I need to check on the other cabins. Make sure the systems are working properly. 2 hours.
"I'll wake you." Clara stumbled into her cabin. Mary Crawford was awake now, sitting up, breathing easier. The children were asleep in a pile near the fireplace. Henderson was talking quietly with his wife, their hands clasped together. Clara lay down in the corner, closed her eyes, and fell into darkness. She woke to Ruth shaking her shoulder. "Clara, Clara, wake up! Something's wrong!" Clara sat up, her head pounding. What's wrong?" "It's the Mitchells. They tried to build the walls on their own, without you checking their cabin first. And now—" Ruth's voice dropped. "Now there's smoke coming from inside their walls. Clara, I think their cabin's on fire." Clara was on her feet and running before Ruth finished speaking, because if the Mitchell cabin was burning, the fire would spread through the firewood walls like a lit fuse. And if that happened, everyone who just learned to survive would burn instead. Clara ran through the snow, her lungs burning. The Mitchell cabin was a quarter-mile east, and she could already see the smoke, thick black columns rising into the white sky. "How long ago did it start?" Clara shouted at Ruth, who was struggling to keep up. "Maybe 10 minutes. Mrs. Mitchell sent her son running. He's only 8, Clara. He was crying so hard I could barely understand him." They rounded the bend, and Clara's heart stopped. Smoke was pouring from the gaps between the logs, not from the chimney, from the walls themselves. And worse, she could see flames flickering through the firewood stack on the north side. Thomas and Mr. Peterson were already there, throwing snow at the burning wood. It wasn't working. The fire was too deep, buried inside the wall where the snow couldn't reach. "Where's Mitchell?" Clara demanded. "Inside!" Thomas yelled. "He won't come out. He says he can stop it from spreading." "He's going to die!" Clara ran for the door. Thomas grabbed her arm. "You can't go in there. The smoke—" Clara ripped her arm free. "I built these walls. I know how they burn. Let go!" She kicked the door open. Smoke hit her like a fist. She couldn't see anything, couldn't breathe. She dropped to her knees where the air was clearer and crawled forward. "Mitchell, where are you?" "Here." His voice came from the left, choked with coughing. I'm trying to smother it." Clara crawled toward him, found him pressed against the north wall, using a blanket to beat at the flame she could barely see through the smoke. "It's inside the wall," Clara said. "You can't smother it from here. We need to tear the firewood stack apart from outside. Where's your wife? Your children?" "I sent them to the Johnsons. They're safe." "Then get out. Now, before the whole structure collapses." "This is my home, my family's home. I can't just let it burn." "You can and you will. Move!" Clara grabbed his arm and dragged him toward where she thought the door was. The smoke was getting thicker. Her eyes burned. Her throat felt like it was closing. They burst outside, both of them coughing, gasping for air. Clara's vision was blurry from the smoke, but she could see the problem clearly now. The fire was burning in the air channels. The hollow ducts that were supposed to circulate air were acting like chimneys, feeding oxygen to the flames and spreading them through the entire firewood wall. "Thomas," Clara shouted, "stop throwing snow. It's not working. We need to tear the wall apart. Rip out the burning sections before the fire reaches the cabin logs." "With what?" Peterson yelled. "Our bare hands? That wood's stacked 3 feet deep." Clara looked around frantically. There, Mitchell's axe, leaning against the woodpile. She grabbed it and ran to the north wall, started swinging. The frozen logs were solid as iron, but she kept hitting them, kept breaking them apart, exposing the burning ducts underneath.
"Help me!" she screamed.
Thomas grabbed another axe. Peterson found a pry bar. Together they tore into the wall, pulling out burning logs, throwing them away from the cabin into the snow. The fire fought back. Every log they removed exposed more flames, more smoke. "It's spreading faster than we can tear it apart," Thomas said, his face black with soot. "Then we tear faster." Clara swung the axe again. Her shoulders screamed, her hands were bleeding. But she didn't stop. Behind them, more people arrived. The Johnsons, the Hendersons, Ruth with her husband Marcus. They all grabbed tools and started pulling at the wall, fighting the fire with everything they had. And slowly, so slowly, they started winning. The flames got smaller, the smoke thinned. After what felt like hours, but was probably only 30 minutes, the fire was out. Clara dropped the axe and fell to her knees in the snow. Her whole body was shaking. Around her, everyone else collapsed too, exhausted and covered in soot. "What happened?" Clara finally asked, looking at Mitchell. "How did this start?"
Mitchell's face was gray. "I don't know. I followed your instructions. I stacked the wood exactly like you showed us. I used the hollow logs for the ducts. Everything was perfect. And then this morning, my wife smelled smoke. By the time I found it, the whole wall was burning from the inside."
"Show me where you got the hollow logs."
Mitchell led her to his woodpile. Clara started examining the logs he'd used for the air ducts. The first 3 looked fine. The 4th one made her stop cold.
"Oh, no."
"What?" Thomas asked. Clara picked up the log. It was hollow, yes, but the inside wasn't clean. It was lined with some kind of residue, sticky, dark, and it smelled like pitch.
"This isn't a duct log," Clara said quietly. "This is a sap log. You used a log that still had sap inside the hollow."
"So?" Mitchell asked.
"So sap is flammable."
When the warm air started flowing through the duct, it heated the sap. The sap ignited. And then the fire spread through your entire duct system like a fuse. Clara looked at him.
"Didn't you check the logs before you installed them?"
I thought they all looked the same. You marked the ones in your pile. I just assumed any hollow log would work."
"They don't all work. That's why I told everyone to wait for me to come mark the right logs. That's why I said not to start building until I checked your walls."
Clara's voice was rising.
"You could have died. Your whole family could have died. And for what? Because you couldn't wait 1 day for me to come help you?"
"I was trying to save my family," Mitchell shouted back. "My cabin was freezing. My children were turning blue. I didn't have time to wait for you to get around to checking on me. So yes, I did it myself. And yes, I made a mistake. But at least I tried."
"You nearly killed yourself trying."
"Well, maybe that's better than freezing to death while waiting for someone else to save me." The crowd went silent. Everyone was staring at them. Clara took a breath, then another. She forced her anger down. "You're right," she said quietly. "I can't be everywhere at once. I can't check every cabin, mark every log, supervise every wall. There are too many of you, and only one of me." "So what do we do?" Mrs. Johnson asked. "Because more people are going to try building on their own. And if they make the same mistake Mitchell did, then more cabins burn." Clara looked around at the faces watching her. "We need a system. A way for people to learn how to do this safely, without me hovering over every cabin." "Teach us," Ruth said suddenly. "Not just how to stack the wood. Teach us how to identify the right logs, how to check for sap, how to know if a duct is safe. Teach us everything you know so we can help each other." Clara stared at her. It was so obvious, so simple. Why hadn't she thought of it before? "All right," Clara said. "Everyone who wants to learn, and I mean really learn, not just copy what I do, meet at my cabin in 1 hour. Bring your questions. Bring your doubts. Bring everything. We're going to turn all of you into experts." They scattered. Clara stayed behind with Mitchell, looking at his damaged cabin. "I'm sorry," Mitchell said, "for yelling, for nearly burning down my home, for—" "Stop apologizing and listen. Your cabin is still standing. The fire didn't reach the actual structure. But your north wall is destroyed. You need to rebuild it today, before sunset, before the temperature drops again tonight." "I can't. I don't have enough wood left. I used everything I had for the first wall." Clara closed her eyes. Of course he did. "Thomas!" she called. Thomas came over, still catching his breath. "Mitchell needs wood. Do you have extra?" "Maybe 2 cords. Enough for 1 wall, if we're careful." "Give it to him."
"I'll pay you back come spring." "Clara, you don't have to." "Yes, I do. Because if Mitchell's cabin fails tonight, people will blame the system. They'll say the walls don't work. They'll say I was wrong. And then everyone will stop building them. And then people will die. So we're going to make sure Mitchell's cabin survives. Understood?" Thomas nodded. "I'll get the wood." An hour later, Clara's cabin was packed. 23 people crammed into 15 feet of space, all of them wanting to learn. Clara stood in the center, Marta's notebook in her hands. "First rule," she said, "never use green wood or sap logs for ducts. If the inside of the hollow log is sticky or smells like pine pitch, don't use it. Sap catches fire. Always check." She held up different logs, showed them the difference, passed them around so everyone could see, touch, smell. Second rule, the air gaps matter. You can't stack the firewood solid against the wall. You need at least 2 inches of space between the wall and the wood. That's where the air circulates. No gap means no airflow, means no heat retention. She drew diagrams in the dirt on her cabin floor, showed them how the convection current worked, how cold air sank through the bottom ducts, got warmed by the heat escaping through the cabin walls, and rose out the top vents. Third rule, you need both intake and exhaust vents. Some people tried to save time by only installing 1 vent at the bottom. That doesn't work. The air can't circulate without somewhere to go. You need the full loop. Question after question came. How many ducts per wall? How far apart should they be spaced? What if you don't have enough hollow logs? What if your cabin is bigger than Clara's? What if it's smaller? Clara answered them all, drew more diagrams, showed them her own walls, let them inspect the system up close. And gradually, she saw understanding dawn in their eyes. They weren't just copying anymore. They were learning. "This is brilliant," Mr. Peterson said, examining one of the ducts. "Your aunt was brilliant. I'm sorry I ever said otherwise." She was also difficult, strange, and refused to explain herself to anyone, Clara said. That's why people thought she was mad. She had the knowledge, but not the patience to teach it. "I'm trying to do better." "You are," Mrs. Henderson said quietly. "You're doing so much better." By the time the teaching session ended, the sun was past noon. Clara had been awake for nearly 30 hours straight. Her body felt like it was made of lead. "Clara," Thomas touched her shoulder. "We need to talk. Privately." They stepped outside. The cold hit like always, but Clara barely felt it anymore. She was too tired. "What is it?" "More people are coming, from the next county over. Word's spreading about the warm cabins, about your system. And they're not just asking for help." Thomas's expression was grim. "They're demanding it, saying we have a duty to share the method. Some of them are getting aggressive about it." "How many people?" 40, maybe 50. They'll be here by tomorrow morning." Clara's head spun. 50 more people.
50 more cabins to check, logs to mark, walls to supervise. It was impossible. She couldn't do it. She could barely stand as it was. "What do we tell them?" Thomas asked. "We tell them," Clara started, then stopped, because she didn't know what to tell them. "We tell them the truth, that I'll help as many as I can, but I can't save everyone. They won't accept that. Then they'll freeze. I'm not a miracle worker, Thomas. I'm a 16-year-old girl with a notebook and some dead aunt's crazy ideas. I'm doing the best I can." "I know that, but they don't. To them, you're the girl who conquered winter. You're the one who has the answer. And when people are desperate, they don't care about your limitations. They just want to be saved." Clara leaned against her cabin wall. She felt the warmth radiating through the firewood, the system working exactly as Marta designed it. And she thought about her aunt, living out here alone for 20 years, probably facing these same demands, probably turning people away because she couldn't save everyone. "Is that why you never taught anyone, Aunt Marta? Because teaching meant facing their expectations, their demands, their anger when you couldn't fix everything?" "I need to sleep," Clara said. 2 hours. Then I'll figure out what to do about the people coming tomorrow." "Clara, 2 hours, Thomas. Just give me 2 hours of peace." She went back inside, found a corner, lay down and closed her eyes. She dreamed of her aunt, Marta, standing in the snow, stacking firewood in patterns that didn't make sense. And when Clara asked her why, Marta just smiled and said, "Because the cold doesn't care about you, child. But if you're smart, you can make it work for you instead of against you." Clara woke to shouting. She sat up, disoriented. The cabin was dark, except for the fireplace. Most people were asleep, but outside voices were rising. "I don't care what time it is. We need help now." Clara stumbled to the door and opened it. The sun was setting. She'd slept longer than 2 hours. And standing in the snow outside her cabin were at least 30 people she'd never seen before. "Are you Clara Vinn?" a man in the front demanded. "Yes." "We came from Porter County. Our town's freezing. We heard you have a system, a way to make cabins warm. We need you to come back with us. Now." Clara looked at them. Desperate faces, frightened faces. The same faces she'd seen on her own neighbors 2 days ago. "I can teach you the system," Clara said. "But I can't come with you. There are too many people here who still need help." "We'll pay you," the man said. "Whatever you want. Just come help us." "I don't want money. I want to help as many people as I can. And the best way to do that is to teach you what I know, so you can go home and help yourselves." "That's not good enough," someone else shouted. "We need you there, to supervise, to make sure we do it right. You have to come." "I don't have to do anything," Clara said, her voice hardening. "I'm offering to teach you for free. If that's not enough, then go home and figure it out yourselves." "People are dying!" a woman screamed. "Our children are dying! And you're too selfish to help us?" Clara felt something snap inside her. All the exhaustion, all the fear, all the anger she'd been holding back for days. It broke free. "Selfish!" Clara stepped forward. "I've slept maybe 6 hours in the last 3 days. I've worked until my hands bled. I've saved dozens of people who called me mad and mocked me and told me I was wasting my life on foolishness. And now you show up at my door, demanding I drop everything and save you too? I'm 16 years old. I inherited a broken cabin and 93 cents and a dead woman's notebook. I'm not a savior. I'm not a saint. I'm just trying to survive, the same as you. So if you want my help, you'll take what I'm offering and be grateful for it. Or you can leave. Your choice." Silence. The crowd stared at her. Then the man in front said quietly, "You're right. I'm sorry. We're desperate. We're scared. But that doesn't give us the right to demand things from you. If you're willing to teach us, we'll listen. And we'll be grateful. I promise. Clara took a shaky breath. Come back tomorrow morning, early. I'll teach you everything I know. But you need to understand, this isn't a miracle cure. It's hard work. It takes time. And it only works if you do it exactly right. One mistake and you burn down your cabin like Mitchell almost did today. We'll be careful. Good. Now go find somewhere warm to sleep tonight. The Hendersons have room, so do the Johnsons. They'll take you in. The crowd dispersed. Clara closed the door and leaned against it. Ruth was awake, watching her. That was brave, she said, standing up to them like that. It was stupid. I just made 30 people angry at me. No, you set boundaries. There's a difference. Ruth stood up and walked over. Clara, you can't save everyone. You know that, right? You can teach them, you can guide them. But at some point, you have to let them save themselves. What if they can't? What if I'm the only one who understands the system well enough to make it work? Then you write it down. You create a manual, step-by-step instructions that anyone can follow, so that even after you're gone, the knowledge survives. Clara looked at Ruth, really looked at her. Why are you being so kind to me? Your mother called me mad. Your family laughed at these walls. Because I was wrong. We were all wrong. And now I'm trying to make it right. Ruth smiled sadly.
Also, because I know what it's like to have everyone expect you to be something you're not. I'm the oldest daughter. Everyone expected me to marry well, have children, be a perfect wife. But I wanted to learn things, read books, understand how the world worked. And people called me strange for it. So when I see you standing here, brilliant and exhausted, and trying so hard to help people who don't deserve it, I see myself. And I want to help you the way I wish someone had helped me.
Clara felt her eyes burning. She was too tired to cry, but the emotion was there anyway. Thank you, she whispered.
Don't thank me. Just sleep. Real sleep this time. I'll handle things if anyone else shows up.
Clara made it to her corner and collapsed. The last thing she saw before sleep took her was the fireplace, still burning steady, the warmth still holding. She woke to dawn light and the smell of bread. Someone, Mrs. Henderson probably, had been baking. Clara sat up, her body stiff and sore, but more rested than she'd been in days. The cabin was mostly empty. People had gone home to their own warm houses. Only Mary Crawford remained, sleeping by the fireplace with her children. Clara stepped outside. The Porter County people were already waiting, maybe 40 of them now, all standing quietly in the snow. We're ready to learn, the man from last night said. Clara nodded. Then let's begin. She taught them, all morning and into the afternoon. Showed them how to identify safe logs, how to space the firewood properly, how to test airflow, how to troubleshoot problems. She drew diagrams in the snow with a stick, over and over, until everyone understood. And when they finally left, heading back to their county with the knowledge they needed, Clara felt something shift, a weight lifting. Because Ruth was right. She couldn't save everyone, but she could teach them to save themselves. That evening, Thomas came by with news. More people coming tomorrow, from 3 different counties. Word spreading faster than the cold. Clara looked at Marta's notebook, then back at Thomas. Get me paper, she said, and ink, as much as you can find. Why? Because I'm going to write it all down. Every detail, every instruction, every warning. I'm going to create something anyone can follow. And then we're going to copy it. 10 copies, 20, as many as we need. And we're going to give them away, free, to anyone who needs them. Thomas smiled. Marta would have hated that.
giving away her secrets for free. Maybe, but Marta's dead, and I'm not going to let her knowledge die with her just because she was too stubborn to share it. Clara stood up straighter. This winter's going to be remembered, not as the winter everyone froze, but as the winter everyone learned to survive. And it starts here, with these walls, with this system.
With Marta's gift to the world, whether she wanted to give it or not. Thomas nodded. I'll get the paper. Clara walked to her north wall, put her hand flat against the logs, felt the warmth, felt the cold trying to get through and failing. And she smiled, because she wasn't just surviving anymore. She was building something that would outlast her, something that would save lives long after this winter was over. And that was worth every freezing hour, every bleeding hand, every moment of doubt. The cold would come again next year, and the year after. But now people would know how to face it. Because of Marta. Because of Clara. Because sometimes the strangest ideas were the ones that saved the world. Clara's hand cramped around the pen. She'd been writing for 6 hours straight, and the manual was only half finished. Every detail mattered, every measurement, every warning about sap logs and air gaps and duct placement. One mistake in the instructions could mean someone's death.
You need to eat, Mrs. Henderson said, setting down a bowl of stew. I need to finish this. Clara, you'll collapse. Then I'll collapse after I'm done. Clara didn't look up. She was drawing the duct diagram again, this time with measurements marked in inches. How many people are waiting outside? 60, maybe more. They keep coming. Clara's pen stopped. 60? Word spreading. Some came from 2 counties over. They're sleeping in barns, in wagons, anywhere they can find. All waiting for you to teach them. I can't teach 60 people at once. I know. Mrs. Henderson sat down beside her. That's why the manual matters. If you can write it clearly enough, they can teach themselves. They can take it home and follow it step by step without you being there. Clara looked at the pages spread across her floor. 5 pages done. Maybe 10 more to go. It won't be ready until tomorrow at the earliest. What do I tell them? You tell them to wait.
Or you tell them to leave. But Clara, Mrs. Henderson's voice dropped. Some of them aren't asking nicely anymore. There's talk about forcing you to come with them, about taking the notebook if you won't share. Clara's blood went cold. They wouldn't. People do terrible things when they're desperate. The door opened. Thomas came in with an armful of paper. I got what I could from town. The general store is sold out now. Everyone's trying to buy paper and ink. He stopped. What's wrong? Nothing, Clara said quickly. How many sheets? Maybe 40. It's not much. 40 sheets. 15 pages per manual. Maybe 2 complete copies if she was lucky. Not nearly enough. We need more paper, Clara said. Lots more. Can you... Clara... Thomas's expression was grim. There's someone here to see you. Says his name is Edmund Price. Says he's come to make you an offer. I'm not interested in offers. You should hear this one. He's got 20 men with him, and they're not leaving until you talk to him. Clara stood up slowly. Her legs were stiff from sitting so long. Where is he? Outside, waiting. Clara grabbed her coat and stepped into the cold. The crowd had grown even larger. 60 people, just like Mrs. Henderson said. Maybe more. All of them watching her. And standing in front of them was a man in an expensive wool coat, his face red from cold, but his posture confident, entitled. Miss Vinn, he said with a smile that didn't reach his eyes. I'm Edmund Price. I own the lumber mill in Porter County. What do you want? Straight to business. I like that.
Price gestured at the crowd. I see you have a problem. Too many people, not enough of you. I'm here to solve that problem. How? I want to buy your system, the complete plans, the notebook, everything. I'll pay you $500, cash, today. Clara stared at him. $500. More money than she'd ever seen in her life. Enough to rebuild this cabin properly. Enough to buy land. Enough to survive not just this winter, but the next 10 winters. No, she said. Price's smile faded. Excuse me? I said no. The system isn't for sale. Miss Vin, be reasonable. You're overwhelmed. You can't help all these people. But I can. I have resources. I have men. I can manufacture the hollow ducts in my mill. I can distribute the plans. I can turn this into something organized instead of this, he waved at the crowd, this chaos. And you'll charge people for it. Of course I'll charge. That's how business works. But I'll charge fairly. And people will pay because the alternative is freezing. Everyone wins. Except the people who can't afford to pay. Price shrugged. Can't save everyone, Miss Vin. Might as well save the ones who can afford it. Clara felt rage building in her chest. Get off my property. I'm making you a generous offer. You're making an offer to profit off desperate people. That's not generosity. That's greed. Now leave before I have Thomas throw you out. Price's expression hardened. You're making a mistake. These people need help. If you won't sell to me, they'll suffer. Their deaths will be on your hands. Their deaths will be on yours if you try to control who lives and who dies based on how much money they have. Fine. Price turned to address the crowd. You all heard her. She'd rather let you freeze than accept help. She's so proud, so stubborn that she can't see. Shut your mouth, Thomas said, stepping forward. Clara's been working day and night to help people, for free, while you're trying to make money off their suffering. I'm offering a solution. You're offering exploitation. Ruth appeared beside Thomas. We don't need your money. We don't need your mill. We have Clara, and that's enough. Price laughed. Is it? Look at her. She can barely stand. She's exhausted. How many more days do you think she can keep this up before she collapses? How many of you will die, waiting for her to get around to helping you? He turned back to Clara. Last chance. Sell me the plans. Let me help these people, or watch them freeze while you cling to your pride. Clara looked at the crowd, saw the desperate faces, saw the doubt creeping in. Saw people starting to nod, starting to think maybe Price was right. I'll give you the plans, Clara said quietly. Price smiled. Smart choice. Now. For free. The smile disappeared. What? I'll give the plans to anyone who wants them. Free. No charge, no profit. Just the knowledge. Clara raised her voice so everyone could hear. I'm writing a complete manual. Every detail of the system, every measurement, every warning. And when it's done, I'll make copies, as many as I can, and I'll give them away. To anyone who needs them, rich or poor, doesn't matter. Because knowledge that saves lives shouldn't have a price tag. The crowd erupted, people cheering, people crying, some shouting questions all at once. Price's face went purple. You're a fool. You could be rich. You could profit from this. I could also live with myself. Clara stepped closer to him. My aunt died alone because people thought she was crazy, because she didn't share what she knew. I'm not making that mistake. This system belongs to everyone who needs it. Now get out. Price stared at her for a long moment. Then he turned and walked away, his men following. Clara watched him go, her heart pounding. That was incredibly stupid, Thomas said quietly.
Probably.
Also incredibly brave.
Also probably. Clara turned back to the crowd. I need volunteers. People who can write clearly. People who can copy the manual once I've finished it. We need at least 20 copies, maybe more. Who's willing to help? Hands went up, dozens of them. Good. Everyone else, I need you to start organizing. Group yourselves by county. Choose someone from each group to be responsible for bringing the manual back and teaching others. We can't do this individually anymore. It has to be systematic. Understood? They nodded, started moving, started organizing themselves. Clara watched, feeling something like hope. Then Marcus, Ruth's husband, came running. Clara! Clara, it's the Wilson cabin! Something's wrong. The system, it's failing. The cabin's getting colder instead of warmer. They're freezing in there. Clara's stomach dropped. Show me. She ran through the snow, following Marcus. The Wilson cabin was one of the first she'd helped build. 3 days ago. The walls had been solid, the ducts properly placed. Everything should have been working. But when she got there, she could feel the cold radiating from the cabin, even from 10 feet away. Mrs. Wilson met her at the door, her 3 children huddled behind her. Something's wrong. The fire's burning, but the warmth isn't staying. It's like the walls are breathing it out instead of holding it in. Clara stepped inside. The temperature was maybe 30 degrees, colder than it should be. She walked to the north wall, the one they'd built together, and pressed her hand against it. Cold. Too cold. She went outside and examined the firewood stack. At first, everything looked right. The spacing was correct. The ducts were in place. But then she noticed something. Near the bottom of the stack, the firewood was damp. Not from snow, from something else. She pulled a log out. The wood underneath was covered in ice. Thick sheets of it coating the wall itself. Oh no. What is it? Thomas had followed her. The cabin's set too low. The bottom logs are sitting directly on the ground. When the snow melted from the fire's heat, it created water. The water seeped under the walls and froze. Now there's an ice layer between the cabin and the firewood. It's conducting the cold straight through the insulation. Can you fix it? Clara sat in the snow, exhausted beyond words. Her hands were bleeding again. Her back felt like it was broken. But the cabin was warm. That was all that mattered. Clara, Thomas knelt beside her. How many other cabins have this problem? I don't know. Maybe all of them. I never thought about the ground freezing. I never thought about meltwater. So we need to check every cabin, fix every foundation, before more people freeze. Clara wanted to cry, wanted to give up, wanted to lie down in the snow and let the cold take her. But she didn't, because people were depending on her. Add it to the manual, she said. A section about foundations, about preventing ice buildup, about ground barriers. Make it clear, make it impossible to miss. I'll write it myself, Thomas said. You focus on finishing the rest. We'll handle the checking. Thomas, you can't do everything, Clara. You taught us that. Now let us help you. Please. Clara nodded, too tired to argue. She went back to her cabin, sat down with the manual, and kept writing. 2 days later, the first complete manual was finished. 15 pages. Every detail, every warning, every measurement. Clara's hands were stained with ink, her eyes burning from lack of sleep, but it was done. Thomas brought in 5 volunteers who could write well. They sat in Clara's cabin, copying the manual word for word, creating copies that could be distributed. 1 page at a time, 1 word at a time. How long until we have 20 copies? Clara asked. 3 days, maybe 4, Thomas said. People are working as fast as they can. It's not fast enough. More people are coming every day.
I know, but it's what we have. That afternoon, a woman Clara didn't recognize came to the door. She was maybe 40, well-dressed, educated. "Miss Finn? My name is Catherine Moore. I'm a teacher from the county seat. I heard what you're doing, the manual, the free distribution." She held out a stack of papers.
I made my own copy from someone who had one of your originals. I hope that's all right. Clara stared at the papers. You copied it? Yes, and I've been teaching it to my students, showing them how the system works. I thought, if we can educate the children, they can help their parents build, expand the reach. She hesitated. I hope I didn't overstep. I know it's your system. It's not my system, Clara said quietly. It's everyone's now. And what you're doing, teaching children, spreading the knowledge, that's exactly what needs to happen. She took the woman's hands. Thank you. Thank you for understanding. Catherine smiled. No, Miss Finn, thank you for refusing to profit from this, for keeping it free, for trusting people to use it wisely. She paused. There's talk, you know, in the county seat, about what you did, turning down Edmund Price's offer, choosing people over money. They're calling you a hero. I'm not a hero. I'm just trying to survive, same as everyone else. Sometimes that's what heroes are. People trying to survive who decide everyone else should survive too. After Catherine left, Ruth came in. There's someone else asking for you. Says it's urgent. Clara stood up, her body protesting. Who? Edmund Price. Clara's jaw tightened. Tell him he's not alone. He brought the county sheriff. And a lawyer. Clara, they're saying the system is based on stolen property, that your aunt had no right to develop it because she was living on disputed land. They're trying to claim legal ownership. Clara felt ice in her veins. That's insane. They have papers, documents. I don't know if they're legitimate, but they look official. Clara grabbed her coat, stepped outside. Price was there with two other men, one wearing a sheriff's badge, one in a lawyer's suit. Miss Vinn, the lawyer said smoothly, I represent Mr. Price's interests. We've discovered that the land your aunt lived on was never properly deeded, which means any innovations developed on that land are subject to— Shut up, Clara said. The lawyer blinked. Excuse me? I said shut up. You're not taking this system. You're not claiming ownership. You're not stopping me from sharing it. I don't care what fake papers you brought. These papers are legitimate. They're lies. My aunt lived on this land for 20 years. She paid taxes. She owned it legally. And even if she didn't, even if every word you're saying is true, it doesn't matter, because the knowledge is already out there. Catherine Moore copied the manual. She's teaching it to her students. They're teaching their parents. It's spreading faster than you can stop it. So you can wave your papers all you want. You've already lost. Price stepped forward. You're making powerful enemies, girl. Better than making powerful friends who want to profit from people's deaths. The sheriff will arrest you for theft of intellectual property. Clara looked at the sheriff, saw him shifting uncomfortably. Will you? Are you really going to arrest someone for teaching people how to survive winter? The sheriff looked at Price, looked at Clara, looked at the crowd that had gathered, all of them watching. Mr. Price, I think, do your job. My job is keeping the peace, not helping you steal from a 16-year-old girl. The sheriff turned to Clara. Your papers for the land are legitimate. I checked them myself this morning. These men have no claim. I'm sorry for wasting your time. Price's face went red. You'll regret this, all of you. When this winter's over, when people remember how you stood against progress. Against profit, you mean, Thomas said.
He'd appeared from the crowd, along with Mr. Henderson, Mr. Peterson, Marcus, and at least 20 other men. "Maybe you should leave, Mr. Price, before you regret it." Price looked at them, looked at their faces, saw no mercy there. He turned and walked away, his lawyer following.
The sheriff tipped his hat to Clara and left. The crowd cheered. Clara felt her knees buckle. Thomas caught her. "Easy," he said. "You're exhausted." "I'm fine." "You're collapsing. Ruth, help me get her inside." They carried her into the cabin, laid her down by the fireplace. Clara wanted to protest, wanted to keep working, but her body had other ideas. Her eyes closed on their own. She woke hours later to darkness. The cabin was quiet. Only Mrs. Henderson was there, sitting by the fire, knitting. "How long was I asleep?" Clara asked. 6 hours. It's past midnight." Clara sat up. "The manuals. Still being copied. Thomas has 10 people working in shifts. They won't stop until all 20 copies are done." Mrs. Henderson looked at her. "You did good today. Standing up to Price, defending the free distribution. Your aunt would be proud." Would she? She never shared her knowledge. She kept it all to herself. Maybe that's why she'd be proud. Because you're doing what she couldn't. You're being better than she was, braver than she was. Mrs. Henderson's hands stilled on her knitting. "My husband told me something tonight, about why he didn't want to come to your cabin when he was freezing. He said it was pride. But it wasn't, not really. It was shame. Shame that he'd called you mad. Shame that he'd mocked your walls. He thought if he came asking for help, it would prove he was wrong. And he couldn't bear that. But he came eventually, because I made him choose. Between his pride and his life. And he chose life. But Clara, most people won't make that choice. Most people would rather die than admit they were wrong. The fact that you're forcing them to confront that, forcing them to change, it's revolutionary. And revolutions always make powerful enemies." Clara thought about Price, about his threats, about the lawyer's papers. "Do you think he'll come back?" "Probably. Men like that don't give up easily." Mrs. Henderson resumed her knitting. "But neither do women like you, so I'd say it's an even fight." Clara lay back down, stared at the ceiling, listened to the fire crackle, and thought about the spring. About what would happen when the winter ended, when the immediate crisis was over. Would people remember what they learned? Would they prepare for next winter? Would they pass the knowledge on? Or would they forget? Would they go back to their old ways? Would Marta's system die out because people were too lazy or too proud to maintain it? Clara didn't know, couldn't know. All she could do was teach them, give them the tools, hope they use them wisely. And if they didn't? If next winter came and people froze again because they didn't prepare? That wouldn't be her failure. It would be theirs. Clara closed her eyes and let sleep take her. Tomorrow would bring more people, more problems, more challenges. But tonight, she'd survived another day. And that was enough. The 20th copy of the manual was finished on a Thursday. Clara held it in her hands, feeling the weight of those 15 pages, and thought, "This is what survival looks like. Not warmth, not comfort, just knowledge, written down, ready to spread." "They're beautiful," Catherine Moore said. She'd returned with 5 more teachers, all of them ready to distribute the manuals across 3 counties. "Clara, do you understand what you've done? This isn't just about this winter. This changes everything. Next year, the year after, people will prepare. They'll build these walls before winter comes. They'll stockpile the right wood. They'll survive because you taught them how."
My aunt taught them. I just wrote it down. Your aunt kept it secret for 20 years. You gave it away in 20 days. That's the difference between knowledge and wisdom. Catherine took one of the manuals. We'll make sure every family gets access to this. I promise.
After the teachers left, Clara walked through town. It had been 3 weeks since she'd opened her door to Ruth Henderson. 3 weeks since the cold had become a killer. And now, walking past cabin after cabin, she could see the firewood walls, the buried air ducts, the systems working exactly as Marta designed them. Children played in the snow, their cheeks rosy, but not frostbitten. Women hung laundry that would actually dry instead of freezing solid. Men worked on repairs they'd been too cold to attempt before. Life was continuing, because of warmth, because of engineering, because of one dead woman's strange genius and one living girl's refusal to let it die with her. But something felt wrong. Clara couldn't name it, just a feeling in her gut, a sense that the storm wasn't over yet. She found Thomas at his cabin, reinforcing his west wall. "How's Mary?" "Better, coughing less. The warmth helped." He hammered another log into place. "Clara, I need to tell you something. There's a storm coming. Biggest one of the season. Weather signs all point to it. Could hit in 2 days, maybe 3. How bad? 40 below zero, maybe colder. Wind that'll tear roofs off. Snow measured in feet, not inches." Thomas's expression was grim. Everything we've built, all these walls, all these systems, they're about to face the real test. Clara's stomach tightened. Will they hold? I don't know. We built most of these in a hurry. Some of the foundations might not be solid enough. Some of the duct placements might be off. We won't know until the storm hits. Then we check them. All of them. Every cabin in town. We find the weak points and fix them before the storm arrives. Clara, there are 47 cabins with these walls now. We can't check them all in 2 days. Yes, we can. We organize, create teams. Each team takes 5 cabins. We work systematically. We don't stop until every cabin is ready. Clara turned to face him fully. Thomas, if these systems fail, if people die in this storm because we didn't prepare them properly, everything we've built means nothing. The manuals become monuments to our failure. We have to get this right. Thomas nodded slowly. I'll gather everyone. We start now. They worked like demons. Teams of 4 people to each cabin, checking foundations, testing ducts, reinforcing weak spots. Clara moved from team to team, supervising, correcting, teaching. Her voice went hoarse from shouting instructions. Her hands bled from handling frozen wood. But she didn't stop. On the second day, Mr. Peterson found a critical flaw in the Johnson cabin. The exhaust vents were positioned too low. They'd freeze shut in a heavy storm, blocking the airflow. The whole system would fail. Can we fix it? Mrs. Johnson asked, her voice shaking. We have to, Clara said. Thomas, we need to tear out the top 3 feet of firewood, reposition the vents higher. We have maybe 6 hours before the storm hits. They tore into the wall, racing against time, racing against the darkening sky. Clara's arms felt like lead, but she kept moving, kept working, because the Johnsons had 3 children, 3 lives depending on getting this right. The wind picked up. The temperature dropped. Snow started falling. Clara, Ruth shouted, we're out of time. The storm's here. Almost done. Just... Clara positioned the last duct. There. Thomas, seal it. Thomas hammered the final logs into place just as the wind hit with full force. It knocked Clara sideways. She grabbed onto the cabin wall to keep from falling. Inside, Thomas yelled. Everyone inside! They stumbled into the Johnson cabin. The door slammed shut behind them.
and the storm unleashed itself. The wind howled like a living thing. The cabin walls shook. Snow pounded against the windows so thick, Clara couldn't see 5 feet beyond the glass. The temperature inside the cabin started dropping immediately. 40 degrees, 35, 30. "The fire," Mr. Johnson said, his voice tight with fear. "It's not keeping up." Clara checked the fireplace. The fire was burning strong, but the cold was winning. Because this wasn't normal cold. This was the kind of cold that killed everything it touched. "The ducts," Clara said. She pressed her ear against the wall, listened. She could hear air moving through the channels. The system was working, but barely. "We need more heat. Build up the fire. Use everything you've got." They fed the fire. Logs, kindling, even broken furniture. The flames roared. The temperature stabilized at 30 degrees. Not warm, but not deadly. Not yet. "How long will this storm last?" Mrs. Johnson asked. "I don't know," Clara admitted. "Could be hours, could be days. And if the firewood runs out?" Clara didn't answer, because they both knew. If the fire died, the cold would win, and 40 below zero didn't give second chances. Hours passed. The storm raged on. Clara moved from cabin to cabin, the ones close enough to reach, checking on people, making sure fires were still burning, making sure systems were still working. At the Henderson cabin, she found disaster. The north wall had collapsed under the weight of the snow. The firewood had tumbled inward, blocking the door. The family was trapped inside, with no way out, and the cold pouring in through the gap in the wall. "Thomas!" Clara screamed over the wind. "I need help here!" They dug through the snow and fallen wood, Clara's hands going numb, her face burning from the wind. They reached the door and hammered on it. "Henderson, can you hear me?" A muffled voice from inside, weak, scared. "We're going to dig you out," Clara shouted. "Stay away from the door." They tore at the fallen wood, throwing logs aside, fighting to create a path. Finally, the door opened. Henderson stumbled out, his wife behind him, both of them blue with cold. "Inside my cabin," Clara ordered. "Now, before you freeze." "But our home will still be here when the storm ends. You won't be if you stay. Move." They ran through the storm to Clara's cabin. The small space was already crowded with refugees from other damaged cabins. 20 people in 15 feet of space. Barely room to breathe. But warm. Alive. Clara went back out into the storm, checking more cabins, finding more problems. At the Mitchell cabin, the fireplace had cracked from the extreme temperature changes. Smoke was pouring into the room instead of up the chimney. The family was choking, dying slowly from smoke inhalation. Clara broke through the door. "Out! Everyone out!" She dragged them into the storm, into the killing cold, because the cold was better than the smoke, better than suffocating. She took them to the Peterson cabin, which still had room, still had warmth, still had functioning systems. "How many more?" Mr. Peterson asked when she arrived with the Mitchell family. "I don't know. I've checked 17 cabins. Some are fine, some are failing. Some I can't reach because the snow's too deep." "You need to stop. You're going to freeze out there." "People are dying." "And you'll die too if you keep this up. Then who helps them?" Clara wanted to argue, but she looked at her hands, completely numb, gray-white with frostbite. Looked at her clothes, soaked through with snow. Looked at her body, shaking so hard she could barely stand. "One more cabin," she said. "Just one more. Then I'll stop." She went back into the storm, fought her way through snow that was now waist deep, headed for the Crawford cabin, Thomas's cabin, where Mary and the children were alone because Thomas was out helping others. The cabin was dark, no light in the windows, no smoke from the chimney. Clara's heart stopped. She ran to the door, pounded on it. "Mary! Mary, can you hear me?" No answer. Clara threw her shoulder into the door. It didn't budge. Frozen shut. She tried again. Again. The door cracked, but held. "Mary!" Clara screamed. "Answer me!" Still nothing. Clara looked around frantically, saw the axe leaning against the woodpile. She grabbed it and swung at the door. Once. Twice. The wood splintered. On the fourth hit, the door broke open. The cabin was cold as death. The fire was completely out. And in the corner, wrapped in blankets, Mary lay with her children pressed against her, not moving. "No," Clara whispered. "No, no, no." She ran to them, checked for breathing. Mary's breath came in shallow gasps. The children, thank God, were breathing normally, protected by their mother's body. "Mary! Mary, wake up!" Mary's eyes flickered open. "Clara? I'm getting you out of here. Can you walk?" "The fire, it went out. I tried to restart it, but my hands—" Clara looked at Mary's hands. Frostbitten. Useless. "It's okay. You kept your children alive. That's what matters. Now we need to move, all of you. Can the children walk?" They could. Barely. Clara wrapped them in every blanket she could find and led them out into the storm, back toward her cabin, back toward warmth. The snow fought her every step. The wind tried to knock her down, but she kept moving, kept the children moving, kept Mary moving. They stumbled into Clara's cabin. The crowd made room somehow. Mrs. Henderson took Mary, started working on her frostbitten hands. Clara collapsed against the wall, unable to move anymore. "That's it," Thomas said firmly. He'd returned sometime during the rescue. "You're done. No more going out there." Clara wanted to protest, but she couldn't even speak. Her body had reached its limit. The storm raged for 2 more days. 2 days of being trapped in overcrowded cabins. 2 days of rationing firewood and food. 2 days of not knowing who was surviving and who wasn't. On the morning of the 3rd day, the wind stopped. Clara opened her door to a world transformed. Snow everywhere. Drifts 10 feet high. The town looked like it had been buried and forgotten. "How many cabins are standing?" Clara asked. Thomas stepped out beside her. "I don't know yet, but Clara, look." He pointed. From every standing cabin, smoke rose from chimneys. The fires were burning. The systems were working. People had survived. Clara walked through the snow to the nearest cabin, knocked on the door. Mr. Peterson answered, his face haggard but alive. "You made it," Clara said. "Your walls held. Your system held. We burned through every piece of wood we had, but we made it." Tears ran down his face. "We made it because of you." Cabin by cabin, Clara checked. Most had survived. The systems had worked. But 3 cabins had failed. The Henderson cabin with the collapsed wall. The Mitchell cabin with the cracked chimney. And 1 more, the Taylor cabin on the edge of town. Clara found them frozen. All 4 of them. Mother, father, 2 children. They'd refused to install the walls, called them unnatural, called Clara's system the devil's work. Now they were dead. Clara stood in their frozen cabin and felt something break inside her. She'd tried to save everyone, taught everyone, given the knowledge away for free, and still some had refused, and died for it. "It's not your fault," Ruth said quietly. She'd followed Clara. "You can't force people to save themselves. I could have tried harder. I could have—" You did everything humanly possible. Some people can't be saved because they won't be saved. That's on them, not you." Clara looked at the frozen family one last time. Then she walked away. That night, the town gathered, everyone who'd survived. They met in the church, the only building large enough to hold them all. 43 families, 162 people,
all alive because of firewood walls and buried air ducts, and one dead woman's strange genius. Thomas stood up first. "We need to talk about what happens next. Spring's coming in a few weeks. The immediate danger's over, but next winter will come too. We need to prepare. We need to make sure this never happens again." "We should make the walls permanent," someone suggested. "Build them into the cabins themselves. Make them part of the structure." "We should stockpile more wood," someone else said. "Double what we have. Triple it." "We should teach our children," Catherine Moore said. "Make this knowledge part of their education, so they never forget." Ideas flowed, plans formed. The community was taking ownership, not just of the system, but of their own survival. Clara listened to them and felt something shift. They didn't need her anymore. They'd learned. They'd survived. Now they were planning for the future without waiting for her to tell them how. "Clara," Thomas gestured for her to stand up. "Come here." Clara walked to the front of the church. Everyone turned to look at her. "This girl," Thomas said, his voice carrying through the silent room, "saved our lives. All of us. She took her aunt's crazy ideas and turned them into something that works. She refused to profit from it. She gave the knowledge away for free. She worked until she collapsed. And when the worst storm of the century hit, she went cabin to cabin, rescuing people, making sure everyone had a chance to survive." He turned to Clara. "We can't pay you what you're worth. There isn't enough money in the world. But we want you to know, this town, this community, we owe you everything." The room erupted in applause. People stood. People cheered. Clara felt tears burning in her eyes. "I didn't do it alone," Clara said, her voice cracking. "My Aunt Marta invented this system. Thomas helped build the first walls. Ruth supported me when everyone thought I was mad. Catherine spread the knowledge. All of you. You did the work. You built the walls. You kept the fires burning. I just showed you how. The survival belongs to all of us." "But you started it," Mrs. Henderson said. "You took the first step. When everyone doubted, you believed. That's leadership." "That's survival," Clara corrected. "And survival isn't about one person being brilliant or brave. It's about everyone working together, sharing knowledge, helping each other. That's what got us through this winter. Not me. Us." The applause continued. Clara let it wash over her. Let herself feel the warmth of recognition, of acceptance, of finally being seen not as mad, but as someone who'd changed everything. When the gathering ended, Clara walked back to her cabin alone. The night was clear, the stars brilliant. The temperature was still below zero, but manageable, survivable. She opened her door and stepped inside. The cabin was warm. The fire burned steady. The walls, Marta's walls, Clara's walls, everyone's walls, held the cold at bay. Clara sat down and opened Marta's notebook one last time, flipped through the pages of diagrams and calculations and strange observations. And on the very last page, she found something she'd never noticed before. A single sentence in Marta's handwriting, so faint she'd missed it every other time. "To whoever finds this, you were meant to. The world needs minds that think differently. Don't let them silence you. Don't let them make you small. Build your walls. Share your warmth. Change everything." Clara traced the words with her finger.
"I did," she whispered. "I built the walls. I shared the warmth. I changed everything. Just like you asked." Outside, the wind picked up again. But inside, the warmth held steady. The system worked. The knowledge spread. The community survived.
And Clara Vinn, 16 years old, orphaned, once mocked, once called mad, sat in her warm cabin and knew with absolute certainty that she'd done more than survive winter. She'd proven that the strangest ideas could save the world. That knowledge shared was power multiplied. That one person refusing to give up, refusing to profit, refusing to let others freeze, that one person could change everything. The cold would come again. It always did. But now people would be ready. They'd build their walls before winter arrived. They'd prepare their ducts. They'd stockpile their wood. They'd teach their children, and they'd survive. Because Clara had taught them that survival wasn't about fighting the cold. It was about understanding it, working with it, trapping it where it belonged, and keeping the warmth where it mattered. Spring would come soon. The snow would melt. The world would thaw. And when it did, Clara would still be here, still teaching, still building, still proving that the most powerful force in the world wasn't strength or wealth or power. It was knowledge, freely given, that turned desperate people into survivors, and survivors into something more. Into a community that would never forget the winter they learned to build walls out of firewood, and bury air ducts in the snow, and save each other's lives, one warm cabin at a time. Clara closed the notebook and set it aside. Tomorrow would bring new challenges, new people to teach, new systems to improve. But tonight, she would rest. Because she'd earned it. Because she'd survived. Because she'd taken one dead woman's strange genius and turned it into a legacy that would outlast them both. The fire crackled. The walls held. The warmth remained. And Clara Vinn, architect of survival, closed her eyes and slept the sleep of someone who'd changed the world, not through force, but through persistence, not through profit, but through generosity, not through keeping secrets, but through giving them away to anyone desperate enough to listen and brave enough to build.